And we are live. Good morning, crypto warriors, and welcome back to the Gym of the Crypto, episode 787. Today is Monday, August 30th, 2021, and I'm King. Unfortunately, Bitcoin Zay couldn't make it today, but we are both still here to bridge the gap between community and crypto every day, Monday through Friday at 10-ish, or of course 7-ish if you're here on the West Coast. And for today's top prices, of course, I know you all love to see the prices every day. That's the first thing some of you do when you wake up. Bitcoin's coming in at $47,877, down 1.3%. Ethereum's at $3,182, down 0.5%. Cardano is at $2.78, down 3.8%. Let's see, we got Ripple still here at number 6 at $1.12, down 2.1%. Solana, I'm not sure if you all have seen it, but Solana's at $99.51. Cent up 6.7%. I think it actually touched $100. So for those who got in that call the last few weeks, I mean, I'm sure you all are very happy. And number 10 is Polkadot at 24.68, down 4.7%. If you notice today I'm using CoinGecko, it isn't that we switch teams, nor do we care about which team these prices are on these platforms. But interestingly enough, CoinMarketCap was down today. This is the screen I got when I went on CoinMarketCap. So I didn't even mean to say that. I had that Freudian slip. So it looks like CZ troubles continue over here. I'm not sure what's happening. I just refreshed it. This is what we're getting. But without further ado, I definitely want to introduce somebody very special to the show today. None other than Mr. Jimmy Song himself. Mr. Jimmy Song, welcome to the show. You got two people here to clap with me. But for those listening, Jimmy Song is a Bitcoin advocate, a developer and author who has been contributing to open source Bitcoin projects since 2013. He previously worked as a software developer in a number of industries. Song joined Monetize, I might be saying that wrong too, a crypto finance software company in 2014. After a one-year stint, Song joined Armory Technologies, an open source Bitcoin wallet management platform. For those who don't know Armory, you don't know about Bitcoin yet, to develop a Bitcoin wallet intended for enterprise business. And then he became the principal architect for Paxos, a New York-based financial institution and stablecoin issuer. In 2018, Jimmy joined Blockchain Capital, a company focused on funding projects based on blockchain technology as a Bitcoin fellow. And in 2019, he published Programming Bitcoin, a book that aims to teach readers the basics of Bitcoin. In addition to the book, he runs a for-profit company, Programming Blockchain, that instructs students around the globe on different techniques to develop Bitcoin. And last but certainly not least, in 2019, Jimmy also became a lecturing professor of 2 graduate level courses at the University of Texas at Austin, and began serving as an expert witness in serving certain events involving Bitcoin. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, Jimmy Song is a Bitcoin OG of OGs. This is why his intro is so long. So again, Jimmy Song, welcome to the show again.
Well, thanks for having me. That was quite the introduction. But yeah, it's crazy how much has gone on in like the last 10 years. I've been in this industry so long. It's like I forget sometimes all the stuff I've done.
Listen, I feel like I was about to introduce a WWE fighter, but it's well deserved by you. First question I had to ask you, we always ask everyone here. I guess for you, it's a little bit different. Like, exactly what year did you get into Bitcoin? And of course, what got you into Bitcoin? I mean, you are one of the OGs of the OGs. So how did you see this thing so early?
Yeah, so I've been a programmer all my life. I started playing with computers back when I was like 9 years old, right? Like I begged my dad to get me a computer. I didn't even know what a computer did or anything, but I was just like, I knew I wanted one. And he took me to Toys R Us, got me a Commodore 16. And I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember that stuff, but Commodore 64 was what had all the games. But Commodore 16 didn't have many games. So I started like programming on it and stuff. And that led me down the path of just like programming all through high school and doing like programming contests and stuff like that. And after college, a friend of mine from high school invited me to join his startup, which at the time was the late 90s, the dot-com stuff. And, startups were all the rage. And I joined this company as employee number 6. And I've been in that startup space ever since. So 2011 comes along. And I'm at yet another startup, and every day I would go on like Slashdot to read the news. And Slashdot, if you don't know, it's still around though. Like Hacker News is way more popular now, but it's just like a website for nerds, right? Like news for nerds, I think is their tagline. And just keeping up with all the technical stuff that's going on. And usually they have like stories on a new Linux distro or a new Apple product or whatever. But there was one story that I didn't know what it was. And it was in February of 2011, so 10 and a half years ago. I still remember very clearly. The story said Bitcoin has reached dollar parity. And I was like, I couldn't even parse the sentence. Like, what reaches dollar parity? Like, how can something technical reach dollar parity? I was like, okay, is this like some sort of like machine or something? I didn't really get it. And I always know something about like each story, right? If it's a Linux distro, I at least know that it's a Linux distro. And if it's like an Apple product, I know that it's an Apple, it's from Apple or something. But this I just had no clue about. So I started reading about it. And one of the first things I found out was, hey, there's a 21 million limit. Now, I didn't really know how it worked at that time, but I was almost immediately like, okay, if there's only 21 million, then I definitely want some. And I looked into it and tried to buy it with a credit card, couldn't figure out how to buy it with a credit card. Tried to, figure out, all right, then how do I get money to an exchange? I even tried to mine on an AWS server that the startup I was at wasn't using. Like, just couldn't figure out how to get it until I saw that Mt. Gox was the place to go trade it. So at the time, Mt. Gox was an exchange in Japan, and to get money there was not easy because you had to use like a legal money transmitter from the US, and there was this other company called Dwala that you had to deposit money to, and then you had to get AML KYC there, and then once everything was set there, then you can like hook up your Dwala account to your Mt. Gox account, and then you can transfer. It was like too much. I was like, forget about it. Probably one of the biggest regrets of my life. I could have gotten in on Bitcoin at like $1, and I didn't because it was too much of a bother to set all that up. But that's when I first heard about it, and I've been more or less addicted ever since. Probably in a slightly unhealthy way at times. Trying to be much better about it nowadays. But yeah, it's been something that I never expected, but. Yeah, I mean, here I am, like having written 3 books and, like going on podcasts like this. It's kind of crazy.
I mean, hey, you got like a 69 Bitcoin bet going on right now, so you can't be into it that much. I mean,
well, to be honest, the Joe Lubin bet never finalized because that weasel keeps not responding, and I just gave up.
Fired early, Jimmy.
He's a weasel. I'm serious. Like. That we shook hands on stage at Consensus 2018, right?
And this was like Ethereum's co-founder for those who are listening.
Yeah, Joe Lubin. We shook hands. He's like, we'll keep in touch. Let's make this happen. Emailed him like every few days for like a month. He finally responds, and like it's not even him, right? It's like one of his minions at Consensus or something like that. And like basically like he keeps kind of moving the goalposts. So we go on like Laura Shin's show a few months later. I shame him into coming on that. Laura the whole time thinks that we're going to finalize the bet on our show. And of course he doesn't. Like at the last minute, he's like, oh, no, I gotta have my people check it out. Like we come to the terms or whatever. And he just kind of backs out. And then we go to Consensus 2019. And, they had a live stream, and the Consensus people told me like they had like Ron Paul on and people like that. He's like, by far the biggest, the most popular thing was this video right here. And basically we supposedly finalized the bet. And, I emailed them to iron out the final details. He just wouldn't he doesn't respond to my email. So
he's
basically
like,
this,
I'm not taking that bet no more.
I mean, that's the thing with this guy. He's just a weasel. He doesn't want to bet. And Like I've given up at this point. And the thing is, he knows he would lose because despite all the DeFi activity going on, it's not 100,000 monthly active users. It's just not. And there are all these trolls on Twitter that are like, "Oh, you're losing your bet against Joe Lubin." No, look at the terms. It's not. And the thing is, he's been a wimp and a coward the whole time. And people told me right after I shook hands with him on stage, this guy's not going to finish this bet with you. I'm like, why? And it's like, if he really thought that he would win, he would be on it like
now that part is true. If he thought he was going to win for that amount of Bitcoin, he'll be on your head for it.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's been stalling and delaying, and this was from like a professional poker player who's been like in a lot of these kinds of bets. It's like, okay, what he's going to do is either say that it's too much, or he's just going to pretend that it never happened or whatever. There's no like face-saving way to get out of this. So he's going to try his best. But I mean, that's exactly what's happened. I didn't believe him at the time, but I do now. The guy's a coward. That's it.
And you know what? I want to actually talk about the bet. So YouTube betted essentially that you said any amount of Bitcoin that Ethereum's decentralized applications would not have a significant number of users in the next 5 years. This was back in 2018. I agree with you right now, definitely right now in 3 years. I mean, I just tried to make an Ethereum transaction over the weekend. EIP 1559 is not working right now as it's supposed to, I guess, as far as the fees being lower. But what are your thoughts on the Ethereum project, I guess, and Ethereum as far as moving forward with users? Like someone asked me the other day on the podcast or interview we did, it was like, do you think Ethereum is going to overtake Bitcoin in price? I'm like, well, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, but if you're looking at fiat currency, I was like, no, I still don't think it's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years unless it's force-fed down everyone's throat through regulators. But what are your thoughts on the Ethereum project and what's going on there?
Well, I have kind of a long history with the Ethereum project. So I started contributing to an open source project called Color Coins on Bitcoin back in 2013. And back then, we could do a lot of the stuff that Ethereum's kind of known for on Bitcoin, right? Like issuing new tokens and stuff like that. And that was the idea behind that project. I was working on it with a guy in the Ukraine, and that itself was an interesting whole thing. But we needed to write some sort of like technical white paper to sort of describe the project and so on. What ended up happening was we farmed it out to this Canadian 19-year-old who came back with a white paper. We paid him some money to do it, and the white paper didn't describe anything that we had actually done. So we're like, hey, what the heck, man? Like, why'd you write a white paper that's completely antithetical to what we wrote? Like, we're paying you to write something that's in line with what with this protocol that we made on top of Bitcoin. It's like, that's the way I thought it should be. We're like, but that's not what we paid you to do. Well, he's like, all right, it's fine. Like, I want to do my own project anyway. And he did create his own project. That 19-year-old Canadian was, of course, Vitalik Buterin, and the project that he was thinking about was Ethereum. So, when I heard about that project and I started looking into it, that my initial thought was, okay, this thing is way too complicated. Like the way he was doing everything was just like, I don't know how much of your audience are software developers, but this is exactly what you encounter with very young software developers, right? The ones that are out of college. They think that they know everything, that they're going to try to do all these things, and they're going to write everything themselves, and they have no respect for anything that came before. And they don't realize, like, okay, like there's a hardening process to software where you get out a lot of the bugs and kinks and things like that. And if you just sort of wing it yourself and think are so arrogant as to think that you're going to write software that's much better than the thing that exists, well, I mean, you're probably going to have a bad time. And that's exactly how he wrote Ethereum. So when I looked at the project, I was just like, okay, it's Turing complete. So that gives you almost no certainty on like contract execution and so on. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's not Turing complete smart contract. So it's very easy to analyze. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. And like, at the time, it was like 2013, 2014. It's like it's taken Bitcoin like about 5 years to harden this thing to the point where you have some reasonable amount of security. This thing's going to be a complete shit show. There's no way this thing's going to be secure. And who's going to put money in something that's not secure? That's the part where I was wrong, because I could have gotten in at like 2,000 Ethereum for $600 or something like that, but I didn't, because I didn't believe in the project. And a lot of people ask me, well, don't you regret not buying like 2,000 Ethereum? That's like $6 million right now or something like that, or six or $7 million. And I was like, no, like I don't, because the thing is, I never believed in the project. I always thought that it was too complicated, that it just wouldn't be secure. And had I bought, say, 2,000 Ethereum for $600, I'd have sold it immediately after the coin was liquid, because I didn't believe in it. And that's okay, because like I understood what Bitcoin was, and I understood what Ethereum was doing. And at the time I was like, okay, the other thing that's really bothersome is they had this giant pre-mine, like something like 70%.
Oh, call it out, Jimmy.
70% of all Ethereum. And like, this is exactly the same thing that the Fed does, right? Like they print money and steal from everybody else. Like Ethereum is just doing it beforehand, as to hide their intentions, instead of doing it like going forward. So I just didn't believe in the project. So when it launched, I was like, okay, well, I guess they finally made something. By the way, it was like delayed like a year and a half or something like that. They didn't keep any of their promises. They ended up having to raise more money, selling more tokens and having a bigger pre-mine and all that stuff. And when it finally launched, I was like, okay, what is this platform good for? I mean, like the only thing that I saw was speculative frenzy. But like Vitalik is, if anything, like a really good marketer. And what he ended up doing was making it a platform for new altcoins, and that has been its bread and butter in one way or the other since then. And that's the only reason it has a high price, is it's a platform to issue new stupid tokens. And it's kind of like the IMF in that way. Like it makes money because of all the other central banks and enforcing central banks and things like that. And IMF just printed like $650 billion in special drawing rights, which are their own fiat currency. Like this is what Ethereum is. It's kind of like a platform for more shitcoins or more fiat money, and that's basically been their bread and butter. And like they'll call it an ICO or an IEO or an NFT or a DeFi product, but that's all of them are the same thing. It's tokens that are there for speculative trading, that don't add anything to society, that don't create any value other than the speculative frenzy, which is essentially stealing from poor people and giving it to all the people that got in early. I mean, that's been the pattern throughout its lifetime. And there's a reason why they keep having to change narratives. It's not ICOs or IEOs or crypto kitties anymore. It's right now like NFTs or DeFi, and all of that is a narrative in order to get you to buy more of these new tokens and keep the Ethereum scam going. And obviously their scam is doing very well, because their fees are like $176 or something. And it's a complete shit show in terms of scalability. I mean, there's only like 5 Ethereum nodes that are actually running, and one giant Infura node that everyone like clones or something. I mean, it's insanity. But the market can stay rational for a long time. For my money, I'm putting it in Bitcoin and not bothering with any of this, because thing is, it's not good for you. I'm a Christian. I don't think it's a very good thing to be speculating and like gambling, essentially, which I think like a lot of these tokens end up being. And that ends up kind of corrupting your soul. And at deep down, if you do make money on this stuff, that you didn't really earn it. It was just sort of like getting in, getting out, and being early to the game versus late to the game, where you would lose money, and that you're essentially taking money from those people, which fair enough.
I mean,
Like
first and foremost, folks, that is a Bitcoin maxi. Mic drop if I ever heard it. Okay, listen, Jimmy. Bitcoin Zay tries to say these same things. We try to preach the same things, but we're not OG enough. We're too young. They don't believe us. We're crazy. They don't know what we're talking about. But I mean, just off of what you said in that last segment, you probably already answered most of the questions I'm going to have for you anyway. Which I already
ask them anyway, because I want to rant some more.
Exactly. I already knew some of the answers to begin with. Really quick, I do want to go to the comments. Our warriors here, our crypto warriors. We are very fortunate. This is literally like the Poloni X Troll Box 2016 in here. So if you have a chance, look at our comments. Reggie Middleton comes in sometimes. So shout out to Reggie. He's in the comments sometimes. He comes on live. Cliff High is in the comments sometimes. He gives us shouts out or he come on live. So shout out to the Warriors. A lot of very intelligent people in there. So some of the comments, first of all, shout out to everybody. There's going to Leroy, Chappie, Wendy Nichols, Sultan. Everybody's happy to have Jimmy here. Everybody's saying hello. Crypto Report Hub, shout out from Phoenix. Bitcoin Zay actually just went to Phoenix today, so he may be having something there. Let's see. Yes, Roland Wishers say not a Commodore 16. LMAO, I guess they had one. DM Carr said I had the 64. D said this is legendary. Alec is laughing that they sell computers at Toys R Us. Of course, some of the crowd wasn't born until later as well. Let's see some other good ones. I saw, this one's Ghost Nick was talking about how you didn't initially buy Bitcoin. He said everything happens for a reason. You could have gotten caught up in the Mt. Gox hack. So that is very true too.
I took it out right before the whole thing like kind of crashed. I did that summer of 2013. A friend of mine just told me like, get your coins off. There's something fishy going on, and I'm still really grateful to that friend to this day.
That is a very good friend.
I've given him some stuff. He's been well compensated.
There it is. So Kendra was asking about a pre-mine. A pre-mine essentially is that before they release the project's tokens, they keep a percentage for themselves, with Ethereum doing about 70%. So 70% of all Ethereum was already sorted out between their people before the regular public received it. So that's the pre-mine. I want to jump into one of the top stories of the day. I don't think I announced the top stories of the day to the public. I think I just told you that before we went live, but top story of the day, Cream Finance DeFi platform loses $19 million in a flash loan hack. That's right, the Cream Finance hacker looks like gained $18.8 million by exploiting a re-entry bug in the AMP token in a set of 17 transactions. Now, it's crazy that we are already kind of talking about how you say Ethereum basically is just a platform to allow altcoins to be built. And essentially to piggyback on that, as we always tell people, like when it comes to most of these projects, altcoins and all this other stuff, I mean, these are just derivatives in the space, but they're all being used to take more Bitcoin away from you. And those people who do it usually go back and buy more Bitcoin. And one of the things we keep telling people is that Bitcoin keeps outpacing any other altcoin out there, so on and so forth as of now. And when I read this story, it was funny seeing the story because recently, we've been teaching people how to do collateralized loans with crypto and all this other stuff going on in the DeFi space. But I found myself wondering this weekend, I was like, really, with a big enough bag and a new enough platform, I can manipulate it myself personally. I literally sat and thought that myself, not that I would do it, but just looking at some of the platforms and looking at some of the weak points or points that could be exploited. I was like, with a couple of these things, like if you have enough money, you could literally just kind of loop your own loan and then essentially take off without paying it back. And it looks like that's what someone did here. Cream Finance, a major decentralized finance protocol focused on lending, has suffered a severe exploit with the hacker stealing nearly $19 million from his platform. They used a re-entry bug introduced by the AMP token. I know a lot of people here like AMP with the Flexa network and everything, but it looks like the way this worked, let me actually go down to it. The hacker exploited the AMP token by reborrowing assets during its transfer before updating the first to borrow in 17 separate transactions. Providing an example transaction, the security firm stated the hacker makes a flash loan of 500 Ethereum and deposits the funds as collateral, as we have taught people here how to do. Then the hacker borrows $19 million in AMP and makes use of the reentry bug to reborrow 355 Ethereum inside of AMP token transfer. Then the hacker self-liquidates the borrow. Again, this is kind of crazy to see. It's truly possible to kind of do because especially on these platforms that are still in beta and not already built up. It looks like the funds are still in one address, and it looks like this security firms are monitoring the address. But even then, I mean, if they start taking off the mixers or whatever, will they really get that back? What are your thoughts on this specific DeFi hack, and then these DeFi protocols in general when it comes to these, collateralized loans and so on and so forth?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think you should characterize them as hacks. You have to understand these are smart contracts. The idea of a smart contract is that code is law. Whatever is in the smart contract is in the smart contract. And just kind of like think about a normal contract, right? Like you have a really good lawyer. There's a clause in there that the lawyer takes advantage of for tax purposes, say, and writes off your racehorse as a farm animal or something like that. And that sort of thing happens all the time, right? Like there's certain things in whatever contracts, and your lawyer, you hire lawyers to figure out, okay, ways in which, okay, this was what was actually agreed to. And and there's a clause in there that we're going to use to get you out of this predicament that you're in, and so on. That's essentially what's happening with all these DeFi hacks. They're not hacks. They're basically very good smart contract lawyers that are saying, okay, there's an escape clause here that they don't really expect people to use in this particular way. But if you use it that way, then we can drain it of its money. So basically what it is it's not an exploit. It's not a hack. It's just a smart contract that was written very badly by whoever wrote it. And it's their fault, not the fault of the people that are just taking advantage of what's there. And the platform, obviously, that it's built on, because the platform allows for complicated, shooting yourself in the foot kind of actions that these platforms are doing. Now, this particular one is, not for very much money, 19 million or whatever, which is kind of crazy that we're saying things like that, because
it's crazy that you're saying things like that, Jim. It's crazy that you're saying, but no, seriously, you're right. It's not that much in the grand scheme.
It's not that much, relatively speaking, because there's literally like DeFi stuff like this happening every week.
That's one person. 19 mil could be one or two, three people in there.
Yeah, but here's what's happening to Ethereum. You get more quote unquote hacks like this, where basically it goes against the spirit of whatever the person wrote, right? Like the contract that the person wrote or Cream wrote or whatever. And what ends up happening is you get the Ethereum Foundation or the people saying, yeah, that's not really good. We don't like it that they did that. So the big one was from the Poly network a few weeks ago, right? And
Poly got hit pretty big, yeah.
And then that was like $600 million. And what ended up happening was the Poly network basically said, okay, we're a cross-chain thing. They called up Binance, they called up Ethereum, they called up every exchange that they knew and said, you know what, like, can you stop this address from depositing or doing anything? And, that way, like, we can freeze these funds because these funds belong to us, even though it was perfectly legal, smart contract execution. And they threatened on Twitter, like, we're going to come at you with every law enforcement officer or whatever. And the person that did it, they basically ended up communicating with the Poly network people and settled for $500,000.
Right. He started giving him most of it back. And then, they scared him out of it.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing, 600 million versus 500,000, right? That's less than 0.1% of the total value. So another way to look at it is it's so centralized and like they can basically prevent whatever transactions that they want to prevent, that it's worth about 0.1% if you don't have the central controller's permission. So the Poly Network's developers, they decided, okay, we don't like this person, and therefore we're going to, tell all of these people not to do business with this person, and that ended up taking 99.9% of the value away. In other words, all of these networks are completely centralized, and if you think that's the end of it, then you have another thing coming, right? The central controllers always, go a little bit by little bit. Right? They first say, okay, well, it's for a good justified reason. And then it's like just a little bit more each time, to the point where it's going to be like, you know what, you're black. We don't like you. So you're not going to be able to do transactions on this network. And this is the thing about all of these networks that absolutely astounds me. when people see quote unquote hacks, right? Again, it's not a hack. That's just the spin that they're putting on it. So whatever actions that they do are justified. Like these are things against your money, right? If they can do it to somebody else, they're going to do it to you, right? At some point, you might be on the other end of it, justified or not. And at some point, like they're going to be able to say, you know what, like, we're going to call you a domestic terrorist or something, and we'll just take your coins away because the U.S. government is pressuring us to do it, or it's our organization has been infiltrated by the NSA or something like that. And it's important to understand that these platforms that have these such strong centralized things are not yours, really, right? Like you have it with their permission. It's kind of like having your money at the bank. You have use of the money that's quote unquote deposited with the bank's permission. But as soon as the bank doesn't like you, if they accuse you of being a drug dealer or money launderer or a child pornographer or whatever they want to label you, they can take that money away. And the same thing is exactly possible on all of these centralized networks where they'll spin it as, like they might not like you and say, you know what, you're a child pornographer, so you're not allowed to be on our network, and we're going to take your money away and seize it, or nullify it, or put a hard fork into the network to ban you from ever doing any business. I mean, this is the reason why Bitcoin is actually useful, and all of these other things are just playing like it's everyone issuing their own fiat money. It's everyone being their own central bank, instead of Bitcoin, where you're being your own bank.
You know what? Like, I love your energy. I hadn't really seen you talk in depth, but between you and Da Vinci's also been on here. Like you two, I was like, I mirror you guys' energy Monday through Friday. Like, people think I'm going crazy. I'm like, listen, as far as my background, I was in the military. I did PR for the Navy for some years. Work with the Pentagon, and I see how things are actually done on the government side for real. And that's why I always tell people, I'm like, no. For me, I would love to hear your thoughts on this in a moment. My thing is self-regulation, because I'm like, listen, they're going to tell you a set of rules and they've already told you what they really want to do, but they've already reeled that back because they know it's too draconian. But I'm like, they're just going to keep giving you rules and regulations. But the United States isn't stupid. We're on a 50-year to 100-year plan when it comes to these laws. Like, we'll say, fine, we only want you to use centralized exchanges today. Maybe tomorrow is hosted and unhosted wallets. Maybe the next day is this. And then I'm like, listen, the next 10 to 20 or 30 years, next thing you know, they're going to be saying you have to use this wallet. You're going to be taxed this way. You use this Howey test for this. So in general, what are your thoughts on the current regulations and the regulatory environment around Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to encroach more unless like we fight back. And that's certainly something that we're trying to do as a community, like calling your senators and stuff like that seem to have blown up the infrastructure bill, at least to media consciousness and stuff like that. But yeah, they're going to encroach, and this is the nature of centralized things. And this is why, like, platforms like Ethereum are becoming more like monarchical, right? Like it's basically Vitalik that determines everything. He says we're going to do Ethereum 2.0. Guess what? Ethereum 2.0 is going to happen. He says we're going to roll back this stuff. It's going to be rolled back. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And centralized, entities tend to want to take more power because, that's how they run. And having power is sort of like an end in of itself. It's always like claimed to be the means, but it ends up becoming an end to itself. And power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely, and it's just going to expand and continue to do that. So regulatorily, I would say that like you have to be prepared for them to do something drastic like banning it. And if you have Ethereum, I mean, you're kind of out of luck, right? Because they can pressure the Ethereum Foundation. They can say, well, we're all hard forking, so that if you're not AML KYC, you can't do any transactions or something like that.
And I can see that being the future.
Yeah, it'd be so easy for them to do that right now, right? Like it's like you're using it for drug laundering or terrorist financing or something, where they put a false flag in there and make it seem like that, and then next thing you know, it's your coins are completely frozen and useless. But on Bitcoin, you actually have the option of holding it yourself, and that's, I think, the only way you're going to get around a lot of this stuff. I mean, like, as it is already, like Gary Gensler, like the head of the SEC, he looks like he wants to come down hard on a lot of this stuff.
Thank you.
Like,
thank you. People.
Yeah, I mean, he's been saying it. Like, just read his speech, right? And he's like, okay, Bitcoin's an actual innovation. Yeah, he's like, Bitcoin's an actual innovation. All this other stuff, it's centralized crap, basically. And he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to regulate this stuff and make sure all of these other things that are centralized basically are illegal securities. Like, guys, you might be making some money here now, going up and down or whatever. But if you really want to preserve your wealth, and every person that's been really rich, what they make sure that they do is protect their downside. You're not protecting your downside by putting, getting 3% on your Ethereum using some weird smart contract DeFi platform or something like that. That's picking up pennies in front of a steamroller. You're gonna get steamrolled at some point. It's just not the right. It's not going to preserve wealth very well. Now, if you're just playing around and trading for tomorrow and you don't really care what happens 5-10 years from now, well, then maybe that works. But then you might as well like go to the casino too. Like that. That's not a good way to build up wealth and become a richer person. The way you do that is protect your downside. Bitcoin is the ultimate downside protection in terms of seizability, because Warren Buffett, he might be really rich right now, but if somebody comes in and decides, okay, we're gonna say Elizabeth Warren gets in and she goes,
hey, we want that tax money, Warren. We want that tax.
and she goes, you know what? We're gonna seize all money from people that owe that have assets over $1 billion and just take it all. They kind of can, right? Like they just go to every bank and every international firm, like even stuff offshore, and say, okay, give us your stuff, or else we're not going to be able to use the dollar. And if you can't use the dollar, even if you are in Mongolia or something, right? Let's say Buffett has some assets in Mongolia, and you don't turn it over, guess what? You're not going to be able to do any international trade. Your domestic economy is going to be completely devastated if you can't use the dollar, because it's the currency of international settlement. So like, even he doesn't have sort of like the downside protection that Bitcoiners have, because you actually possess it, right? It's like having gold bars buried, except it's even better than that, because you can back it up. You can have multi-sig. You can have all these ways to protect your wealth. And, a lot of people are focused on the frenzy, on the numbers going up and so on. That's going to pass in like 6 to 12 months, guaranteed. Like, there's no way that stuff's going to like frenzy. And the thing is, most people are not good traders. You're not going to know when to get out. It's going to hit the peak. It's going to start coming down, and you're going to tell yourself, hey, you know what? Like, I'll just wait until it goes back up a little bit, then I'll sell. It never does that, and you just keep holding down to the bottom. That's how most people are wired, and that's if you think you're better than that, well, then good luck. But I've seen this, this play out like a million times. That's just what happens. People hate looking at how much money they've lost, so they just forget about it, and they end up losing like a ton of money doing that. And that's how most people in this industry are going to be. It's going to go up, and then it's going to go back down. The few people that make money are the people that are really good traders. What does that remind you of? Yeah, it's the high frequency traders on Wall Street that make money on every Wall Street bet. Whereas like, us normal people, like, we don't make any money, right? Like it's our money that they end up taking either through Cantillon effects or through like frequency trading and knowing how to get in and out of the market or whatever. But yeah, it's all a rigged game, it is essentially what I'm saying. The only non-rigged game is Bitcoin. And I would encourage all of the people watching, protect your downside, buy Bitcoin. And if you want to play with this other stuff, do it. But, I like expect to lose it, right? Because
we say the same. It's like, for one, to trade, especially in cryptocurrency, is a full-time job. People don't understand that. It's not a part-time. I'm gonna trade today. I'm trading. It's like, no, either you buy and hold or you trade. It's like, and that trading is a full-time job. Like I said, most people don't do well at that full-time job. And then as far as buying Bitcoin, that's what we know. We continuously tell people that because at the end of the day, it's not even a conversation. People, you own Bitcoin and anyone wants you to do something you don't want to do, you are automatically voting at that moment. You can just say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take my resources, my value, and go my own way. Now, again, I kind of have an idea of what you're going to say, but we got to bring this story up. Charles Hoskinson responds to criticism over Cardano's Coinfirm partnership. Wise Crypto, the subsidiary of financial ratings firm Wise Ratings, slammed Cardano's partnership with Coinfirm, describing it as a bad move all around. Now, first and foremost, Wise Crypto, if I can remember correctly, they don't have much room to talk. I think they did a crypto rating thing a few years ago where they had Bitcoin like number whatever. It wasn't number one. So because of that, Wise Crypto doesn't have much room to talk. But what they did, what they pointed out here was actually pretty interesting. They said essentially the excessive regulation is how the banking system was choked to death. With this announcement, it was seen that ADA is proudly announcing they want to follow in their footsteps. Essentially, Coinfirm has tools and services that enables the exchange, custodian, and all other third parties to clearly track the history of ADA held in their wallet using their anti-money laundering directive and financial task force guidelines. So essentially, that Wise Crypto, as you can see here on this Twitter thread, pointed out that Cardano is supposed to be a free and decentralized network, but they're becoming closer to becoming a censorship-prone, manipulated network as they join up with Coinfirm. They actually said you might as well use Facebook's Diem or another CBDC if you're actually going to go this direction. Now, Cardano did shoot back saying that, hey, our base layer, where is it at? Let me see. Cardano co-founder and creator responded with a video message that emphasized that the base layer, the point and the purpose has always been about building in layers, building modules, building ecosystems that enable compliance with local regulations. So while the base layer of the system doesn't care if you're from the United States, China, or Japan, it's the identity and metadata that you can start to add, and those other things that give you the ability to be in compliance with your business domain, regulator, or otherwise. Now, my thoughts on this is Cardano's nice way of telling everyone that they're going to go mainstream and they're going to be AML and KYC. Even if your base layer does allow you to do it, if no one's using it, it doesn't matter. No one's building on it as far as building on it with the hopes that people enter through the base layer, it doesn't matter. They're building it and they're building multiple layers, hoping that you do enter through the third or fourth layer. By that time, they do have AML, KYC, and a full body regulatory environment. So actually, to get back to your point of hardening as well, it's something I keep telling people about Cardano and every other project out there. I said, everyone who thinks their project is the next home run, you described it so eloquently, that hardening process. I'm like, wait until they get into the top 5. Wait until hackers come after them. Wait until the regulators come after them. Wait until you have to scale. Wait until all these issues happening all at the same time. So with this article being said, it looks like Cardano is going toward the government regulations way of doing things. But what are your thoughts on this article and then Cardano as a whole, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's another shitcoin. That's like my TLDR. But I like to put more of a fine point on it. If you read the statement from Cardano, right? Like it's like legalese speak. It's like, oh, we want to comply with local regulations and stuff like that. Now, what does that sound like? What, like, seriously, like, think about what that reads like. It reads kind of like what Mark Zuckerberg's testimony in front of Congress or something like that, right? They're operating like a company. That's basically what they are. And like the token that they've issued is essentially their product. They're selling all of this stuff to you. They're trying to make you think that they're legit. And this is sort of like the corporate double talk that comes out of every corporation. Hey, we're doing things like from one side of the mouth, it's to their consumers that are like, oh no, we're protecting you. On the other side of their mouth, they're saying, no, government, we're going to comply with you. Really, it's to kind of get out of trouble, and minimize risk in whatever way they can. But this is how every big corporation works. And you have to understand Cardano, Ripple, Ethereum, all of these are big corporations. You're just giving, every time you're buying and using their services and stuff, you're, at least with Facebook, you're getting something, right? You're connecting friends and family. At least with Google, you're getting Gmail or whatever. All of these things, it's just, you're not actually getting a good or service. It's just, you get to gamble in their casino. I mean, that's what these things are. They're just big casinos, and you're giving them your money. And, some people might win or whatever. But they're big corporations, and they act exactly like it. Like, look at their statements. Look how, the fact that there is a Cardano spokesman that talks, right, on behalf of Cardano should tell you everything that you need to know about how, quote unquote, decentralized it is. That is not at all, because you have somebody speaking for Cardano. Okay. Like, if anybody tried to speak for Bitcoin, right, like it could be like, Core Dev or whatever. Like, no, everybody else in the Bitcoin space would be like, that person doesn't speak for me. But when Charles Hodgkinson says something about ADA, everyone listens, because he does speak for Cardano, because it's a big corporation and he's essentially the CEO. So in a sense, like what you're betting on, if you're betting on Cardano or whatever, it's buying a share in a casino where the company doesn't have to honor anything about the share, right? Like, it's like a much reduced form of equity. It's not really even equity. It's just sort of tokens where they have no obligations whatsoever. So, the speculative frenzy is largely because people don't understand this dynamic of decentralized controllers versus Bitcoin, which is actually decentralized, and there's a lot of confusion around that. And I hope to write a book to clear up this confusion. But that's largely what it is. It's a big corporation, and they're acting exactly like a big corporation. That's it.
I got to throw a curveball in here, and the only reason I'm throwing this in is because this has been like an ongoing debate on this show. So essentially, for those who know the debate. It's been the whole Hex debate on the show. We've actually had Richard Hart on. Great interview. Great interview we had with him. Glad to have his thoughts. Like a week later, we had Reggie Middleton on, who pushed back. He said Hex was security. What are your thoughts on your old friend Richard Hart and his Hex project?
Oh, he's a complete scammer. I mean, like, worse than this is like BitConnect type stuff. Like, he is a scammer of scammers. Like, and you have to understand his history. He made his money spamming email, right? Like, he would send out lots and lots of email spam, and he made like a couple $1 million. He penetrated the Bitcoin podcast scene and stuff like that for a couple of years, and then he kind of did a heel turn. I mean, and he let everybody know that this was the direction he was going in, that he's going to launch his own coin, and we all knew. And he's very good at getting publicity and stuff like that, which is how Hex has done. And you have to understand, like, all of these altcoins, their market cap is directly proportional to their marketing spend. That's all it is. And like I said, these are all just giant corporations, except they don't really have a product per se, other than just marketing. So it becomes like a pure advertising play, right? Like, the reason why you buy Apple products is partly because the products are good, but also because there's sort of like a lifestyle, sort of thing attached to it that you want to become. There's an aspirational aspect to it. All of these cryptos, that's the only thing, that aspirational aspect that they can sell. And you could tell, like, if you're at all a competent coder, right, and you examine these projects, there are some that are actually have pretty good cryptographers and stuff. So stuff like Zcash, Monero, Decred, Grin, like they actually have good cryptographers, right? Like they have like academics, or, well, not academics, but actual practical CS people that can implement this stuff. How are they doing? They suck. All of them have like almost no marketing. So they continue to drop in the rankings or whatever, versus all of these other ones that are very good at marketing, right? Like Charles Hodgkinson has has written some papers. So he's essentially selling that credibility in order to, basically get to run his own corporation where he doesn't actually have any responsibility. So
and then quickly, I had to call him out this weekend on another podcast. Somebody was like, Ada, Charles Hoskin, he used to be with Ethereum. I was like, just because he was with Ethereum doesn't mean that he's going to develop a successful project. He could develop a pump and dump just like the next guy. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, the thing is, like, this is what Adam Back told me, and I was talking to him a while back. But he got into Bitcoin like 2013 ish. I used to email back with him back then, and I didn't know who he was, so I was just like, which is kind of weird because he's like one of the like OG of OGs, right? Like early on the cypherpunk mailing list, that sort of thing, and original cypherpunk. But he was on the big
flex, nice low key flex. We'll go ahead.
Yeah. So he was telling me about how, like, first time he was like on Bitcoin Talk Forum, somebody messaged them and said, hey, like, if you can lend your name to our token, we'll give you like this percentage of a free mine. And he told me that his thought process went like this. He's like, okay, if I lend my name, then I'm going to ruin my reputation. And if I ruin my reputation, I get 20% of this token. Why am I only getting 20%, right? Like, it's like, if I were to do it, then it would be a much larger percentage, but I also care about my reputation. So there's no way I'm going to do this. Essentially, all of these guys are selling their reputations for money because reputation is a very important part of marketing. And that's essentially what Richard Hart and all the Hex people have done. They are persona non grata everywhere because everyone knows them as scammers, right? Like, there's that, and for good reason. Like, it's clear that he took a ton of money and he's probably rolling in the dough, and he hasn't provided value to anybody, but he gets to run this sort of like semi-illicit corporation, from wherever he is. We don't really even know where he is. And I guess if you want to like be in on that scam and be completely subject to whatever Richard says, then go for it. But I wouldn't trust that guy with a 10-foot pole, man. Like, just he's and that's the thing. Like, you don't really want to trust anybody, right? Like, the whole thing about Bitcoin is verify, don't trust.
There we go. Thank you. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
And all of these projects have somebody that you got to trust. Why would you do that to yourself? You've already trusted your government. How's the government done for you? Right? Like we've been screwed in every which way. Like, like, unless you happen to be like the richest of the rich. So doesn't make sense to me.
I like what you mentioned about the code too. We keep harping on that. So I know the very basics, like, I know very basic coding, but I do know I learned enough to be able to at least read white papers and read the actual code on some of these projects. And I am glad that I did, because literally it changed the game. Like, overnight, it changed the game. Usually, okay, let me check it out. Oh, wait, why is this here? Why is this here? And then you can ask questions about the code. And when you talk to project founders and you're asking about code and they're like, oh, you understand it? I'm like, yeah, I do. And the answers they're giving you are those roundabouts. I'm like, all right, I know. Anyways, some of the commenters here, we have some great commenters. They said that you're on your 50 Cent how to rob energy. He's in a cowboy hat. We should have known he's going to come here shooting. Jimmy Song just told everyone that they're adopted on Christmas morning and we gave away your presents. Oh,
the thing is, you could go back to Bitcoin, man. Like you probably have made money. The thing is, like, for most people, they need to lose a ton of money before they actually realize the value of Bitcoin. And, getting burned is really the only way they learn. You have the opportunity on this show to actually learn, like, the non-painful way, right? Like, just, I've done all coins. I've done all of this stuff. There's a lot of people in the Bitcoin space that have gone through everything that you have and have been burned and lost a lot of money. You can learn their lessons instead of losing money yourself. Like, what would you rather do?
And that's why we have the KRBE Digital Assets Masterclass. We gotta get that. But seriously, we tell people that, like, we just launched a masterclass about a month or so ago, and that was the reason. And that's what we were telling people. We were like, trust us. Like, if you can understand how many lessons we've already learned in this space, and we're literally showing you how not to learn these lessons or go learn the lessons. One person, you can find all this stuff on the internet. Then go find it on the internet. Yes, we spent.
I don't understand these people that want to, like, get everything for free. Like, here's the thing. I talked to, and I promise it'll come back to this point. So I talked to the one of the highest ranking defectors from North Korea, Tae-young, a while back, right? He's and I got to speak with him at the Oslo Freedom Forum. And, I was just talking to him about, like, what North Korea did and how it was. and stuff like that. And he told me, okay, well, the way that Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Il and Kim Jong Un, the way they've consolidated power is to give stuff away for free. And I was like, what? Like, how's that work? Well, he goes, well, in North Korea, you get free healthcare, free education, you're guaranteed to have a job, and you get free housing and all this stuff. He's like, and initially people are very happy, right? Because I have free healthcare, I have free housing, I have free this, I have free that. And the thing is, there's a catch to all of that, because you're not paying with money, but what you do pay for is with compliance. And he said, okay, so at a certain point, they run out of medicine, right? Like it's North Korea or whatever. And you go to the doctor, you have a problem, and the doctor tells you, well, we don't have any medicine for you. And what can you do, right? You could try to complain, but what are you complaining about? You got it for free, right? Like there's no real right to complain there. And what he pointed out was there's a sacredness to market transactions where you're actually paying for something, because there's an obligation by the other party to fulfill something. Whereas if they give it to you for free, there's no obligation whatsoever. And this is the beauty of a market transaction. If you pay somebody for it, well, now they have to provide something for you. And and both of you are better off with that market transaction, because they make money, you get information, or you get a good or product or service. And that's a very good thing. Instead of just trying to get stuff for free, that way lies socialism. That way lies, all sorts of, abusive stuff, because in a sense, instead of paying with your money, you pay with your mind. And unfortunately, this is what every pre-mine in the altcoin space has done. You get airdrops of coins for free, and you're now sort of like wedded to it. You got it for free.
Oh, I see. Really, wow. I see what you're saying. Now
but really, they bought your loyalty, right? And this is what North Korea has done, and all of these, centralized organizations do, is they buy your loyalty with it. And like NFTs and ICOs, like ICOs, really, it was like these struggling startups for the most part that would go and, okay, now you're wedded to Ethereum. Now you have to show us forever. NFT, same thing, right? Starving artists. Okay, well, you've sold on our platform. Now you're wedded to us forever. Now they're all going out and shilling Ethereum. You don't want things for free, right? If you have a market transaction where you're getting goods or services for the money that you're paying, that is a good thing. That means that you both have an obligation towards each other. That means that you're actually drawn closer together. You become more of a community. Now, it's possible that they don't provide a very good service, in which case you should warn other people, hey, don't do that. But if they're providing something good, now you can tell other people it's good for you're getting something out of it. They're getting something out of it. Your friends are getting something out of it. It's what creates community. It's what creates civilization, society, all of these good things, by having transactions that are not free, that are fair exchanges. So that's my little rant. Sorry, I keep going on rants.
No, I love it. I actually just brought this up because you mentioned NFT, and I was like, let's talk about it. Long story short, Visa white paper describes NFTs as a promising medium for fan engagement, essentially going along with the buy of last week. And of course, Visa bought, I think, $150,000 crypto pump. But by and large, this is why I call it changing the narrative. Said this years ago. I said, watch in the next 3 to 5 years as JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Visa, MasterCard, everybody who was so either anti-crypto or on the fence of crypto, try to change his narrative and start writing things and talking about it every day. And that's what it looks like Visa is doing. Their white paper is saying, hey, NFTs has this promising medium for fan engagement. And we all know about this. We talked about Visa last week. We've been talking about the NFT market ongoing this entire year. So with that, you started already. I kind of already got the gist of it. But what are your thoughts on the NFT market and where we're headed to in the future with the NFT market? And in consideration too, I'm with you. This market is super irrational, but even knowing how these communities move, because sometimes we could say, all right, this is a shit project. It should not work. Yet for some reason, people think they're going to become a Dogecoin millionaire. So what are your thoughts on NFTs with that being said?
Yeah, NFTs are, like I said, like a way to get like starving artists on your side, right? Like, and we all know that friend that's like a starving artist, right? Like they can be a painter or musician or something like, and they're struggling to make it, right? And they have trouble getting paid. They want their big break, and for them, this kind of represents NFTs, right? Like it's like, okay, well, maybe finally like people can listen to my music or see my artwork or do whatever. Thing is, it's kind of like playing the lotto at this point, right? Like if you're already famous, then yeah, maybe you can sell an NFT or two. But if you're not famous, you ain't selling nothing, right? Like that, it's just it's gonna be just you. It's for people that are already famous that maybe make some money. So in other words, it's the rich getting richer, and none of the rest of you or rest of us like that get anything. It's a way to bribe people with hope, and this is sort of like endemic in any democracy. Is you have the hope someday of being president or something like that. So you let the government get away with it because someday you might be in power, right? You have the hope of maybe becoming a billionaire. So you let the billionaires and big companies kind of get away with stuff. And that's kind of what's going on here, right? Like there's this hope. Okay, I might be the next, Beeple and sell for $65 million for a piece of JPEG or whatever. Like that's why a lot of these starving artists kind of support it, and unfortunately that's not a dynamic that's going to end well, because a lot of these things just like crash all of a sudden and stuff like that. And if you think about it, it's literally a row in a database, dude. Like, why are you paying for that?
I agree a lot with what you said, but my question is, what about for the artists who say, well, this is where I will always have a percentage of my sales moving forward? Let's say they are, you know what I mean? So what's your thought on that one?
Yeah, that's so this is like making sure that you get a percentage of the NFT every time it sells, something like that.
Right.
Okay, so for me that's just putting a tax on every transaction, right? Like you get to tax, and in a sense, whoever quote unquote owns the NFT doesn't truly own it, because if they want to sell it, you have to pay a 20% tax. And this is the thing about taxes; it takes away sort of your property rights. With Bitcoin, it's ours, right? Like we own the Bitcoin. But if you have an NFT and you transfer it, then some of it goes to the artist because they're demanding a tax every time they transfer. And it's their right to do, but in a sense, if you own the NFT, you only really own like 80% of the NFT, because whenever you want to sell it, 20% has to go to the artist. So I think that's not an incentive that a lot of people are gonna like. I don't know, maybe Arthur Hayes has this huge article on NFTs about how it's like a big flex over everybody else. And the more useless it is, the more of a flex it is. And I kind of understand that dynamic. But it's only a dynamic that happens in a fiat world, where you do have like Cantillon effects and stuff like that. And people need to flex to show that they are part of the rich people that are able to get the benefits of newly printed money. But there's definitely sort of like an aspect of that I think is kind of appealing for a lot of the NFT owners is, hey, I'm so rich, I can spend $10 million on a digital rock. I like a literal digital rock. It just seems incredibly stupid. Flex. Yeah, I mean that was his argument. I'm like, yeah, there's probably a market for that, but how big can that market be? Because I don't, and you can argue that modern art is very much the same way. It's a way to flex for rich people. A painting that doesn't look like anything might have a nice story attached to it, but that's about all you're buying. But
banana on the wall. We're looking at you down there in Miami.
Yeah, exactly. It's a flex for rich people. That's and that's what NFTs are. I don't think it has any place in like a normal person's portfolio. I don't think it has any. It just seems insanely bubbly at this point. Like who knows, maybe it goes on for another couple of years or something much longer than I think, but to me it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
So I did have a last two things for you. It's actually interesting. The last question I'm going to have for you, I just saw Reggie actually join the chat. So Reggie Middleton is in the chat. I was going to ask you about that because I knew it was going to lead to what you're currently doing in your project. But first, really quick, Alec, go ahead and shout out Alec, our in-house moderator and producer, said biggest point of centralization for Bitcoin currently. What are your thoughts?
Um,
or even weak point in general? What's the thing that, you know, where can Bitcoin get his pants down? Where can Bitcoin get caught with his pants down at?
yeah, well, so here's the thing. I've made predictions like this before, and I ended up being completely wrong. So 2013, I thought that you know, the darknet markets being shut down would be like horrible for Bitcoin. Like, and when Ross Ulbricht was arrested and the Silk Road shut down, I was proven wrong. It went from $100 to $1,100 in 6 weeks, right? Like it did an 11x in 6 weeks after he was arrested, right? So I was completely wrong about that. I also predicted in 2017 that you know, if Bitcoin forks, that it's going to be really horrible for Bitcoin. Bitcoin did fork. Bitcoin Cash was created in August of 2017, almost exactly 4 years ago, and it actually made Bitcoin go from like 2,600 to like 19,000 over like 4 months, or 16 weeks, something like that. Like, you can make these predictions about, you know, what is Bitcoin that is so horrible, or what's a vulnerability. They might not be vulnerabilities, so take what I say with a grain of salt. So I would say that maybe one of the aspects that might be a little bit vulnerable is sort of the regulatory environment in certain countries. But you know, there's some debate around this, right? Like it's possible that if they shut it down in the U.S., then price goes up everywhere else, something like that. Um, I don't know. It's such a hard thing to predict. I like the one thing I do know is that if ECDSA breaks, then yeah, I mean there's some vulnerabilities that Bitcoin would have, but then if it patches it, then it might actually make the price go up, right? Like stuff like that. Um, and by the way, ECDSA is used in every secure website pretty much. So if that breaks, then like your bank website is going to break and everything else is going to break. You know, like Bitcoin would be probably one of the first things, but also not the last thing that breaks as a result. But then, you know, if you know, as a community, we come to a new consensus on some mitigation, then it would probably go up, right? It's like, okay, it survived this attack, then it's gonna go up even higher. So it's hard for me to say. Like, you know, we thought for a long time that China had too much mining. Well, all the miners got kicked out of China, and we're seeing a bull run again. What the heck, right? It's like it's very difficult to say. Let's just put it that way.
I appreciate that answer. No, for sure. And also, you know what? As soon as I saw this book, I was like, that's where it was. I did actually meet you before. I met you at Russell and Kong's Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin is conference.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bitcoin is. And I remember it because you gave everyone the little Bitcoin book in the gift bag. That was a complimentary book, if I remember. And for those for those who haven't read it, it's a really good book, straight to the point. It's a short book, but yeah, the little Bitcoin book. Check that out for sure. I like that one. You know, even though
Russell actually ended up writing the forward for the other book, Thank God for Bitcoin, and the organizer of Bitcoin is conference is actually one of my co-authors for the Thank God for Bitcoin. So you know, if you're interested in a Christian argument for Bitcoin, that's what Thank God for Bitcoin is.
Oh wow! I think that actually would be pretty interesting, especially with the whole Bitcoin is allowed now and all that. So seeing it from a Christian side of the house for sure. So you all can check those out on Amazon. So next thing I had to ask you is again, we got Reggie in the comments, so I would be interested in his comments too. You already know what's coming. All right, Paxos launched, and this is for me just being enthusiast of the space and watching how events unfolded. When Reggie Middleton got that SEC and everything went after him, I feel like Paxos, or I didn't feel like Paxos launched like within 24 to 48 hours. I thought that was kind of weird, but in general, what are your thoughts on Veritaseum and what is Paxos doing differently? I guess I'll ask, kind of start.
To be honest, I left a while ago and I don't know what they've been doing. I mean, I do know the CEO, Chad Cascarilla, pretty well. You know, he's the one that recruited me and stuff like that. So, but I mean, as far as the company goes, you know, they're licensed in New York. So they do have a bit license, and they have, you know, as a requirement, they have to keep a certain amount of Bitcoin in reserve. And I'm sure dollars in reserve for their stable coin and their gold coin and things like that. But I don't have too much insight into their internal operations because I'm not a shareholder. And yeah, I don't get access to it. I'm not sitting on their board. Their board, by the way, has some like serious heavy hitters like Bill Bradley and stuff. So yeah, but yeah, I really honestly can't speak too much to it because I don't know.
Oh, okay, that's good. And as far as right now, are you currently still at the University of Austin, Texas?
Well, so I did teach a class a little while ago, but like COVID kind of shut a lot of that down.
How was that? How was that teaching like crypto, I guess, in school?
Yeah, well, so it was Bitcoin, and I used like a draft of the book Programming Bitcoin as like the teaching material. And it went really well. It was 60 graduate students. I think it was one of the most popular classes among the electrical engineering graduate department. I like a lot of people took it. There were even some people from the business school that took it. There were visiting professors that took it. So it was a lot of people were really curious. And I've been told that other universities, if you have like a Bitcoin related class, your class fills up real fast because people are really interested in that stuff. But yeah, I mean, there were a ton of students, like a lot of graduate students, by the way, for a lot of these universities had, at least back then, before the pandemic, had a lot of Chinese students because they paid full price, right? Like versus, yeah. So it was kind of funny because I think half my class had a last name starting with a Z. But yeah, I think there was like one Zimmerman in there, but yeah, they were all like Zhang Zhao and stuff like that. It was interesting, but it was a fun class to teach, and they got a good grade. I think almost all of them got like A's. I wasn't a strict grader. I was like, okay, you do this and this, you get a B. If you do this, this, and this, you get an A. That was it, and that ended up being a fun time. I don't know if I can necessarily do it again because it does require kind of a weekly commitment. And I have to, or at least back before the pandemic, I had to go in person. And it's not bad. It's like 5 minutes from my house, but I do travel like quite a bit and I'm out of town and things like that. So
hey, we didn't do this whole Bitcoin thing to go back to teaching Monday through Friday, all right?
Yeah.
Hey, tell them to catch you on the live stream, all right?
Yeah.
And last thing, I want to ask you one last thing before we pass out your information to everyone, we let you go. Someone said DeFi on Bitcoin. What are your thoughts?
I like, first of all, it's not DeFi, right? It's all centralized. So it's CFi. Well, actually, it's not really even finance, it's gambling. So C gamble or something. I don't, you do have some projects, I think, that are really interesting. So DLCs, if you know what those are, those are discrete log contracts. And basically they let you settle certain things on chain. So there's a company called Atomic Finance and SureBits. They're both working on it. So they have some very interesting stuff. If you know what like call options are.
When you're trading, right?
Yeah. So they've implemented a way to do call options on chain without any trusted third party, which is really cool. And they're testing that right now. And they're really interesting. SureBits is doing some escrow, I'm assuming. No. So what ends up happening is you put it into like a 2 of 2 multi, or you basically put it into a Bitcoin smart contract. And based on the Oracle, and the Oracle only tells you like what the price is at expiration. Based on that, the contract executes and you get however much Bitcoin. Like if it expires worthless, it goes to one, all of it goes to one person. If it expires at a different price, then one person gets a certain amount of Bitcoin and the other person gets another amount of Bitcoin. So it's a really cool project, and it is centralized in the sense that there is an Oracle. But what you can do is make sure that the Oracle doesn't know about your contract, in which case they're not going to really cheat you out of the money. So the centralization is somewhat limited, and it does allow for some very interesting things that you can do, and including like buying a call option and saying, okay, well, you can get like 12% APR by putting it in this contract, and they tell you pretty clearly, okay, you're essentially betting that Bitcoin will stay under this price or stay over this price or something like that. And using, market makers to take the other side of the bet, and they hedge. And it turns out if some sort of hedging for your business makes sense, then this might be a good way to do something like call options and lots of other things. And we're just scratching the surface. You can probably do some form of on-chain betting and things like that, and you can bring DLCs over to Lightning, so you don't even need like an on-chain transaction to do a lot of that stuff. So you could potentially do something like, okay, I want to bet on the 49ers game tomorrow night or something, and basically put it into a contract, and then that way, like, how hard is it to go collect on a bet, right? Like this is like one of the stupidest and most annoying things about betting. If you like put your money where your mouth is, put your money into that contract.
We're looking at you, Joe Lubin. We're looking at you, Ronnie Moes. Hey, you remember Ronnie Moes, man? What's call it back at
Roger Ver, you mean?
No, not Roger Ver. What's the Civic Key? Benny Lingram. Didn't they have a bet? One of them Welsh on their bet too on stage back at Bitcoin in Vegas a few years ago.
Yeah, so that sort of thing is I think a lot better, and we'll see where it goes. I don't know how successful they'll be. I'm not like these altcoins saying, oh, it's going to be the next big thing, and it's going to take over this industry or whatever. It might not, but it's an interesting thing, and they're trying stuff out and seeing what the market is. That's how any normal business would go about. Instead, altcoins have basically made it so that, oh, we don't have to prove anything, and we're just going to take your money and sit on it, which is what most of these ICOs have essentially done. So, DeFi, or at least centralized, interesting financial products, are definitely already here in Bitcoin, and to some degree will be proven out much more in the next few years. We'll see if there's a market for it.
I'll say this last comment out loud, so you can plug whatever you like afterwards. Reggie's in the chat. Reggie Middleton said, I already did DeFi on Bitcoin in 2013. That is one of the embodiments of the granted patent. Hence, the discrete log contract is likely infringing, just like Hex. And then he said, my computer froze for his second part of his comment. But that's Reggie's thoughts on that one for sure.
Well, I don't know if I don't really believe in intellectual property, but that's another whole conversation.
Right. All right. So with that, thank you, of course, Jimmy, for being on. Definitely learned a lot already today. What can you leave people with? I already plugged your Twitter on the chat. I plugged your Amazon as well. But is there anything else you want to tell everyone before we let you get off?
Yeah, if you're interested, this is the book, Thank God for Bitcoin, The Creation, Corruption, and Redemption of Money. And it does make a moral argument for Bitcoin. And I've had a lot of people tell me about the book that, they've been trying to orange pill their friends and family for a long time, sometimes for like 4 or 5 years. And then this is the book that kind of got them over the hump and actually orange pilled. For a certain type of person, this argument works really well because it's a moral argument. And oftentimes, like, we in Bitcoin think, okay, well, number go up is enough. Sometimes it's not. You have to have a greater reason than number go up in order to actually get into it. And this book makes the moral argument, essentially talking about all the evils of the fiat monetary system and how unjust and horrible it is for civilization, for politics, for personal integrity and character and things like that. And ultimately how Bitcoin removes all of the corrupted incentives of the fiat monetary system. So I would encourage many of you that are listening to this, even if you're not a Christian, if you have a mother that's a Christian, a father that's a Christian, a brother that's a Christian, a sister that's a Christian, that's going to help them understand it a lot better and from a Christian perspective, because unfortunately, a lot of Christians tend to dismiss it as like drug money or something like that.
That is very true, especially here in the States. Again, Jimmy Song, thank you for being here. Truly appreciate it. Definitely love to have you back. We always love having some of the Bitcoin OGs on here to tell us about the early days that I can only report on these days. But again, thanks for being here and truly appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was fun.
And for those out there watching and listening, make sure you smash that like and share for some more crypto news. Of course, we will be back tomorrow. at the same time of 10ish. Cheers.